Line 28, please add after the name David, put down Weir. And on page 34, on line 16, before Mexico, please add the word new. That's it, thank you.
Can I have a motion to accept the minutes with those corrections?
Madam Chair, I move we approve minutes as amended.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the minutes as amended. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, thank you. Postponements, we don't have any. Public participation, this is for anyone in the audience who wants to speak about something that is not on the agenda. If you're here for something that's on the agenda, we'd like you to wait until that item comes up. So is there anyone here who has something else they need to speak about? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Smith.
may I request we remove case number 19Z005000147 from the consent agenda for discussion?
Thank you. We don't need a second for that, right? We do need a second. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we remove case number 19Z0500147 from the consent agenda. Everybody in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, Commissioner Smith, could you tell us a little bit about the discussion about this area that went on yesterday at the City Council meeting?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The El Paseo blueprint is one which has come through the years, a discussion, a plan, a research, a formal effort to come to a sort of a position point. And those position points abut or come in play with these zoning changes discussed in the case. The discussion about a transportation system, an adjoining merchant and lifestyle connection with it, and the discussion on how best use can come to play in El Paseo and the university connection to downtown was terrific. It was a wonderful discussion and deserves to have more planning put to it. That's what was discussed about yesterday.
Thank you. So I wanted to ask staff, in the El Paseo Corridor Blueprint, it talks a lot about mixed use and, you know, housing and retail and office together in that area. Is that possible under the zoning that they're asking for?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, based on the case that's being presented before you tonight, these are properties that are trying to come into compliance to either be redeveloped or not. So several of them have become vacant buildings. They used to be restaurants or they used to be offices. And in order for them to redevelop, this will allow them to redevelop. So this will bring their property sizes, which most of them are over an acre in size, into a C3 zoning, which will allow them to redevelop. In C3, you can propose apartments or you can propose office and commercial uses. So we would move forward towards those mixed uses.
Okay, so it would be possible to propose both a mix of retail or business and housing on some of these parcels of land?
Madam Chair, that is correct, because this is also an area that's located within the infill. So we can also do some of those proposals as part of our infill development process.
Thank you. Is there anyone here who represents any of these cases? Okay. Seeing none. So we need a motion and a second to approve.
I'll make a motion. I make a motion that we approve case number 19Z0, I'm sorry, yeah, oh, rather, 0500147.
I second that, Madam Chair.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept this case. We've had a little bit of discussion. Any more questions or discussion? Okay, Becky, can we have a vote?
Board Member Smith?
I say yes. It does fit the comprehensive plan. It does work well with anticipated ideas coming forth with the El Paseo blueprint, and it follows staff recommendations.
Board Member Muniz?
I vote yes, and I feel it will bring some good changes for that area, help it come alive again.
Board Member Sanchez?
I vote yes based on staff recommendation, and it works with the El Paseo Corridor Community Blueprint.
Board Member Guerrero?
I say yes based on staff recommendations and just looking forward to seeing that area used again.
Board Member Gordon?
I would like to be the first one to say that it comes into compliance with Elevate Las Cruces and also with staff recommendation, and I do vote yes.
Chairperson Thomas?
I say yes based on staff recommendation, site visit, and the hope that these properties will become the initial properties that move us toward the El Paseo plan. Okay, the next item is, oh, I'm sorry, old business. We didn't have any old business, so we're moving to new business. I need a motion and a second to approve case number 19CS05000146. Can't tell which are O's and which are zeros.
Madam Chair, I move we approve case 19CS 0500146.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve this case. Any discussion or questions? Well, let's start with a presentation. You have a presentation? Yes, okay, we'll start with that.
Madam Chair, staff has a presentation, then the applicant's representative will have a presentation, and then we can go to public comment as far as this case. So this case this evening is an appeal for the decision made by staff for an alternate summary subdivision. Currently, the property is located at 510 and 550 South Telshire Boulevard. It encompasses 3.29 acres in size. It is zoned C3, which is commercial high intensity. Currently, it encompasses one lot, which is labeled as Lot 1A from Mesilla Valley Mall, replat number 4, and then one tract that was formerly owned by the New Mexico Department of Transportation right-of-way. Currently, the property does not have any access to Loman Avenue or to the NMDOT off-ramp in that location. And currently, the access has been privately, or it has had access from a private road known as Mesilla Valley Mall Ring Road as part of the Mesilla Valley Mall property. Here's an aerial map of the subject property. Essentially, the line that is located in the center of this property was already vacated. The maps have not been updated per the county department. So as you can see, this is currently one lot, which encompasses Lot 1A. And then this is the future or the tract that is being designated as a land that was purchased from NMDOT. Along here is where you will see Ring Road, which is a private roadway that is owned by the mall. So through the process, staff did do a review of the alternate summary that was being proposed. The alternate summary was going to adjust the existing lot lines of Lot 1A and then convert the existing tract into Lot 3A and a portion of Lot 1A. So essentially, you're moving portions of Lot 1, realigning, and then creating an additional lot known as 3A. Based on staff's review per section 32-36B2, Access to all commercial lots must be from an improved public right-of-way or from a 50-foot road, permanent road easement or access. During the review, staff identified through the resolutions and the ordinances, in which we'll go in next, that this requirement was not being met. However, the rest of the standards per the zoning code, subdivision code, and design standards were being met. So right now, we're just appealing the decision of whether access is being provided to Lot 3A. Here's the proposed plat of the subject property. Earlier in the map, you could see that these were the lines of the existing lot right here that are dashed. They are now being moved over towards the west side of the property, and then you're getting basically this new lot that's being created out of the additional tract. The applicant is proposing to create a second access point to Ring Road that is not currently existing now. So if you were to drive into the property, this used to be one of the old businesses, which was the Empire Buffet, and by Pecan Grill, you had the one access point into the property. This would generate a second access point in order for redevelopment of the property. Since Loman's access is controlled by NMDOT, they have already provided review comments that an access easement or a driveway would not be permitted off of that access point because they just realigned Loman. Per Resolution 79-335, there was an agreement between the city and the mall. The agreement conveyed land from the city to the developer. They vacated portions of right-of-way, which would include Don Roser and Foothills. They used to run through the property. Those were vacated. It created Mesilla Valley Mall Ring Road, which is the road that basically runs around the entire Mesilla Valley Mall property, which was a private road that would have open access to the public at all times. And it also determined the responsibility of construction and maintenance for any of the various improvements that would take place to that road. At the current time, there are no legal easements on file with the county. We went through our land management department to see if anything has been filed as separate documents or as a platted document, and there has been none filed. But there have been several agreements that have been filed between adjacent property owners. One of those agreements is an easement agreement, which allows Lot 1A of Mesilla Valley Mall Subdivision Replat Number 4, among other properties, access to Ring Road. Lot 3A and a portion of Lot 1A are remnants of NMDOT right-of-way, which were not included in the agreement with the mall. And based on the city's position, since we do not own the Ring Road, it is owned by a separate private entity, the city cannot grant an easement off of that property to gain access to someone else's property because we do not own it. So we cannot go to someone's property and say we have to grant access if somebody doesn't own it. So this would be basically between the mall property and the developer who is trying to create the new replat to get access for the lot. In order to prove legal access to staff in order to move the subdivision forward, either a new or amended agreement would need to be placed with the mall, establishment of an access easement from Ring Road, or any other legal remedies that would deem necessary, whether it be if a civil suit is filed against property owners and something is brought forth to staff to actually clarify that easement has been granted. The notice was sent to all the public departments as well as any relevant agencies. Everybody agreed that the development or the subdivision met the requirements, except for that there was a lack of legal access being provided for staff to approve. We did receive one phone call from an adjacent property owner inquiring of the meeting. Other than that, staff did not receive any additional phone calls. The applicant is here tonight to appeal the decision based that the agreements and the resolution on file do convey legal access to the property, and that the existing and proposed access easements between lots in Mesilla Valley Mall Replat 4 and 5 do extend legal access for Ring Road. So tonight I leave you with your options to vote yes and support the appeal, or vote no and uphold staff's determination. That would conclude my presentation, and we can go to the staff, to the applicant's presentation.
Thank you, thank you, that would be good.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Paul
I need
Pompeo,
to
Southern Associates.
swear you in. Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
Yes, I do.
Can you state your name?
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commission. My name is Paul Pompeo. I am the applicant's representative for civil engineering and surveying, Sauter Miller Associates, 3500 Sedona Hills Parkway, Las Cruces. Madam Chair, due to some legal issues that may be discussed here, at the conclusion of my presentation, the applicant's legal representative, Ms. Catherine Morrow, will also be giving a short presentation after I conclude mine. Basically, Madam Chair and Commission, as staff has pointed out, we are looking at the property in this hatched area here, close to the corner of Telshore and Lohman. And we're requesting alternative summary plat approval to modify the common boundary line between two parcels. Once again, creating a 2.05 and a 1.24 area tracts. Basically, shaded here between the two colors shows the disposition of the property line between the two properties as they exist now. As staff pointed out, the dashed line in this location shows a previous lot line that has been relocated by a previous replat. The drawing before you now indicates that the new property line is created over to the west side of the property. It does create a flag lot situation where the lot does physically come out and touch Ring Road, and then a joint easement is created giving access to the two parcels by this plat. Once again, a copy of the subdivision plat as submitted to staff. What's before you here, Madam Chair, is this shows you an rendering of what the proposed uses are of the property. Redevelopment of a Bubba's restaurant in the area here, were approximate location where the previous building sat, and then some additional commercial opportunities on the western side of the lot that was obtained by from NMDOT. As stated, the City Council Resolution 79335 vacated a portion of Don Rozier Drive that existed through the Mesilla Valley Mall property and created a common access known as Mesilla Valley Mall Ring Road. I think it's important to note, if the reading of that document on its face, there was a trade of public right-of-way for the creation of the Ring Road easement. We do concur with staff that there is no separate standing formal document that creates that easement, but it was very clear in that resolution what was being created, who it was being created for, and it was open for use by the public. So at the very least, there is a prescriptive right for all users to use that easement. Again, the language of the resolution was not restrictive as to exactly which entities could use that road. And it can only be construed and was considered open access to the public at all times. Based on the language, is construed that any property that physically has access to the Mesilla Valley Mall Ring Road can use it. It is our position that private agreements or covenants between entities that may limit the use of the Mesilla Valley Ring Road does not create a basis by which the city can deny or approve a subdivision application. So in conclusion of my presentation, Madam Chair, the issue of access off Mesilla Valley Ring Road was settled in 1979 for all properties dealing with and adjacent to the mall that could have use of it. That concludes my presentation, Madam Chair. I would be happy to answer any questions that the Commission may have, and then I would like to turn the floor over to Ms. Morrow for her comments.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Yes.
I do. Could you please go back to the two screens that you presented to us? The one prior to this, okay. Apparently you have stated that there has now been an easement created between the two lots that now go to Ring Road?
There is an easement that was a joint access agreement between the property owners, which is the same property for disclosure, that was created in this area here.
Okay, but the portion that you're showing on this diagram, the eastern side of there apparently looks like there's two easements here. One on the west side, one on the east side, and one on the west side.
That is correct.
Okay, the one on the west side now extends down to Ring Road. That was not here before, is that correct?
It was previously created by the owner of the property.
Is there a legal document to support that?
There is.
Okay.
And the applicant is here, or the owner is here if we want to discuss that more fully, but that was created prior to the submittal of this subdivision plat.
And how wide is that easement, do you know?
27 feet.
Okay. What's this little portion of space that Ring Road would probably cut down? You see just below the red line down the Ring Road, is that all this open space? Who does
That is here?
Yes, who does that belong to?
That belongs to the Mesilla Valley Mall properties.
Are they willing to convey that for the purpose of settling this problem?
I believe there's been an attempted communication between my client and the mall, but I think that there was no resolution on that. There was no agreement on that.
Okay. Then my next question is on this particular one. Lot 2A is where Pecan Grill is, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And the next lot is where this new proposed restaurant is going to go?
That is correct.
Okay. In fact, I see that they're grading land right now. They actually have started.
There was some earthwork on that.
Right, they're doing
property,
work.
yes.
What is the problem of this? I remember when the Chinese buffet was there where this new restaurant proposed is going to be, there was always access from there. I think it went actually into Pecan Grill for them to get out onto to Ring Road, I think, or was there other access from the lot that the new restaurant's going to go on? Was there also access there at that time?
When the original Carino's, I believe it was an Italian restaurant, was there
Yes.
prior to the Empire Buffet.
Right.
On Mesilla Valley Mall, replat number 4, in this area here, between the properties and the Pecan Grill property, there was a common driveway easement that was created by replat number 4.
Okay, and that will now stay? That is still in existence?
That is in existence today, and it will stay in existence.
Okay. And what is the problem of just granting access from 3A into 1A as 1A goes into 2A?
I believe the issue just is as a matter of traffic, I'm going to speak from an engineering perspective, just from an issue of traffic flow. This driveway here is close to this slip ramp that's coming off of Loman, and it would more than double the traffic that's going in and out of that access point there. We believe from a traffic engineering standpoint and safety that it's better to have the access in this area here. Plus, it also creates, in our opinion, illegal access because Lot 3A now physically touches the Ring Road alignment.
Do you happen to know how wide an entrance or exit road has to be?
I believe in staff's previous slides, they say that every commercial property has to be accessed off a 50-foot either right-of-way or a 50-foot public easement.
So you would need another 23 feet?
That is correct.
Is there any problem of getting 23 feet from Lot 1A?
I believe the issues have to do with the number of parking stalls that are allowed. It just the site design allows more for a driveway than a 50-foot easement.
Okay, so if this is denied, then apparently Lot 3A is going to stay vacant forever.
Well, we need, based on this development plan, and then I'll turn the speaker over to staff. This dashed line here that I'm pointing at the cursor is the current property line. And so therefore, it does not afford the opportunity for a large enough tract of land based on the size of the building and the parking space requirement. So that's why this line needs to move over here so that all of the parking associated with this new restaurant is wholly contained on that property.
So again, my question is, if nothing is done here and it's denied, Lot 3A will stay vacant?
Then if we cannot gain this access because we have no other access point, we do not have it from Loman nor from the state right-of-way controlled ramp coming off the interstate system. If this was denied based on that, then that property would remain vacant, and then we would all get to look at a vacant lot as we drive up Loman.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Gordon, just to confirm, they would not have to make their new access 50 feet wide. They just have to come off of a 50-foot access. Ring Road is already 50 feet, so they can have their 27-foot driveway. They don't have to create a new 50-foot access right here. This does not have to be 50 feet. you have to come off of a designated 50-foot access. So they would meet the requirement of their driveway. They would not need additional space.
Okay, then what is the problem of just getting this 27 feet down to Ring Road?
The concern has been is that Ring Road is owned by the mall property. The previous agreement that has been filed only gave Lot 1A and Lot 2A access, which came with legal descriptions. When you adjust legal descriptions, you cannot give yourself access to a property if you do not own it. So the mall would have to do an amended agreement allowing access to Lot 3A because now the previous agreement that was filed in the county states that they're only allowing access for 1A and 2A. 3A is not part of that legal description, so it has to become a new agreement with the mall. Essentially, it's between the mall and then the applicants tonight.
So what is the purpose of this being before us tonight?
In a nutshell, and not to be argumentative, but we disagree with staff's position, and that led to the comment that led to the denial of the application, which is why we're before you here tonight. We're appealing that, the reason for that denial. So, excuse me then, so what you're saying is that you feel you are entitled to this 27-foot easement with access to Ring Road? Well, to clarify, the 27-foot being created is by our own plat. I believe the issue that's before you tonight is that Lot 3A does not have standing to have access off a Ring Road, and we believe that it does because of the 79 resolution that created the Ring Road. And I don't want to get too far into that issue because I'd like to have Ms. Morrow come up and speak to the legalities of that specific issue. That's fine with me. I just want to make sure I fully understand this because this is a very important decision that's going to affect what happens to that piece of land. Yes, it is. Thank you very much. And I stand for any further questions or responses. And then I'd like to turn the floor over to Ms. Morrow. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or for Mr. Pompeo? Yes.
Yeah, quick question, and I realize it doesn't fully address the issue that you have here, but what is the reason that you have not sought to just amend the agreement so that you could remedy this that way? I'm aware that there has been attempts at that, but I'm going to let Ms. Morrow speak to that specific issue. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Nichols.
Larry Nichols, Community Development. To assist Mr. Gordon with his question, on this drawing it shows that there is an existing access that has been granted, and they're showing a proposed access that would enable them to have access to Lot 3A. That is one of the main issues of the appeal.
Can you hear me now?
You have to speak directly into the microphone.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
And I need to swear you in.
Sure.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do. Good evening, Madam Chairwoman and council members. My name is Catherine Brack-Morrow, and it's my pleasure to be here this evening to represent PDG Prestige, Inc., the owner and applicant seeking approval of the Mesilla Valley Subdivision Replat Number 5. I'm going to try not to cover the same ground that Mr. Pompeo already covered this evening out of respect for everyone's time. But there are several issues that should be considered by this commission prior to the decision on the replat. So first, it's important to note what's being requested in this replat application and what currently exists on the site. So up on your screens right now is the proposed property use. And as you can see, we are requesting 2 lots to be formed out of this replat. And that is different than what the staff report references on page 1, that the request is to subdivide 3 existing lots into 4 new lots. That's a misconception of what is being requested here. So there was some discussion, and I'm going to try and go back a couple slides. So there was a discussion about what the current characteristic of Lot 1A is and whether it's one lot or two lots. And as you'll note in the packet that was provided to you by staff and in their presentation this evening, both the zoning map and the aerial map note that Lot 1A is two lots. So it's been referred to as Lot 1A and Lot 1B. There is some confusion as to whether or not a vacation of that lot line ever actually went through. It's currently, I'll let you know, being taxed as two different lots. We get two different, or my client gets two different bills for these two lots. So, which doesn't make a lot of difference to the decision before you this evening. But essentially, we believe that this is more akin to a boundary adjustment, where you're essentially taking two lots that both have access to Ring Road through a 2007 agreement, in addition to the creation of Ring Road that Mr. Pompeo discussed previously. So both of those lots, whether we want to call it Lot 1A or Lot 1A and 1B, both of those have historically had access to Ring Road. And so if you look at this, this is the existing property layout. And so then I'm going to take you to what the proposed lot layout is. And under this proposed property layout, both of the lots currently have so both of them are using land that already has access to Ring Road. And so we are not asking for the creation of multiple additional lots. And essentially what we think we're asking for is the creation of two lots out of two lots. There's no question that we are adding some land to one of those lots from the NMDOT parcel transfer. But we end up with two lots out of what we think are likely two lots already. Because we're dealing with a replat of an existing subdivision that does not increase the total number of lots, the alternate summary process is appropriate for this replat. And the purpose of the alternate summary process is intended to streamline the processing of small subdivisions by allowing them to be approved administratively. Unfortunately, this process has been anything but streamlined. Instead, this process has taken over 18 months, in large part due to the very issue that is before you today in the staff recommendations. Namely, staff has asked you to deny approval of this replat due to perceived lack of access to Lot 3A. As my argument this evening will demonstrate, Lot 3A currently has legal access. So if you'll look at page 2 of the staff recommendations, bottom paragraph of the project description, staff has taken the position that proposed Lot 3A and a portion of the reconfigured Lot 1A are a remnant of the NMDOT property and are not included within the access agreement. And this is incorrect for the reason that I mentioned just a moment ago. Lot 3A contains a portion of the lot that was already in the access agreement that we'll be discussing. And Lot 1A does include a portion of the NMDOT piece. But both of them contain property that already had access to Ring Road. So Mr. Pompeo discussed the history of this area and how access has been treated for lots touching Ring Road in the past. I'm not going to go through all of that again, but I want to reiterate that there is a memorandum of understanding in your packet from staff, which provided for the construction of the Mesilla Valley Ring Road. I'm just going to call that Ring Road for ease during my presentation this evening. So that agreement includes that while the road is a private one, quote, it shall remain open to access by the public at all times. So as we've already discussed, the access that is required for approval of a subdivision is access to a 50-foot right-of-way. The permitted use of Ring Road for lots 1A and 1B is also clear from the Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, Restrictions, and Reciprocal Easement Agreement, which is also contained in your packet. On page 3 of the CCNRs, in section 1C, the owner here, PDG, because it owns Lot A, Lot 1A, whether we want to call that 1A and 1B or 1A, and also the NMDOT piece. So here, the owner, quote, shall have the perpetual right to use Ring Road in common with others for pedestrian and vehicular, including emergency and public safety vehicles, access, ingress, and egress to its parcel to and from Telshore Boulevard. So PDG, as owner of these lots, has paid a monthly maintenance payment to the developer, the mall, for maintenance of Ring Road, and is in full compliance with this agreement. Therefore, pursuant to both the Memorandum of Understanding creating Ring Road, as well as the CCNRs, which provide an easement across Ring Road to PDG, PDG has access for both of the lots, which it is seeking to modify with this replat. The CCNRs are not a document that has been approved by the City Council or any other governing body for the City of Las Cruces, and therefore it's our position that the compliance with those CCNRs is a private issue between two adjoining landowners. So to the extent that there is any dispute between the two adjoining landowners, that is a private dispute that would need to be addressed by those two adjoining landowners. And it's our position that the city would not have standing to enforce those CCNRs in court. So the planning staff has taken the position that PDG had to obtain permission from the mall pursuant to the CCNRs for access to these lots, the same number of lots that they actually already have access to. Even though this position, we believe, is contrary to the CCNRs, which explicitly provide on page 9, and you can look in reference at section 7A, those CCNRs explicitly provide that the parcel, which is Lot 1A or 1A and 1B, the parcel may be improved, used, operated, leased, sold, conveyed, transferred, importantly, subdivided, replatted, or mortgaged, and improvements thereon constructed, erected, altered, expanded, you get my point, at any time. And so it is important that even these CCNRs include language which permits this parcel to be replatted and subdivided. Also importantly, the CCNRs do not contain a requirement for the owner of a parcel, here PDG, to submit any subdivision or replat plans to the developer for approval. Instead, the owner is required to submit preliminary designs for building plans or modification of structures to the developer for approval, but it does not contain any requirement for submission of subdivision or replat plans to the developer. Nonetheless, in an effort to work with the city staff and in hopes of moving this project along, PDG did contact the owner of Mesilla Valley Mall on multiple occasions to let them know of the plans to replat this area. These contacts go back to September of 2018. PDG has never heard back from the mall, either for or against this replat. This hearing process should serve as the last and final public notification to the mall of this proposed replat. Importantly, and as I mentioned a moment ago, the CCNRs are an agreement between private parties to which the city has no stake. The city would not have standing to enforce these CCNRs and should not be permitted to take a position here which would essentially choose one private landowner's positions or interests over another's. Any disputes between the property owners regarding an alleged violation of the CCNRs, which we have not had any notification of an alleged violation of the CCNRs, is a private dispute to which the city would not be and should not be a party. The development of these properties is in everyone's interests. PDG's, the malls, as they're trying to sell the mall currently, they just put it on the market the other day, and the cities. The development of these properties would provide commercialization to distressed and underutilized properties, which are currently an eyesore on one of the busiest intersections in the city. Development of these properties would also provide an increase in tax base for the city and potential employment and new jobs. PDG has several $1 million invested in this property, dollars which were not invested without due diligence on the very issues which are in front of the commission tonight. The position that the city has taken in the staff report would deprive PDG of any economically viable use of this property, unless, as the staff report notes, PDG can convince the mall to respond and provide an additional access agreement. PDG's ability to use its property should not be contingent upon the mall when it already has access to these properties. Such cooperation by the mall is not necessary because legal access to these parcels already exists. Denial of this replat would be contrary to law and is not supported by substantial evidence. Rather, it's based on an erroneous understanding of the lots to be created and upon an inaccurate interpretation of private agreements to which the city is not a party. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have this evening.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sorry. Yes, go ahead.
I have several questions. I'm trying to put things in proper order
I'll try
here.
and brace myself.
No, nothing. I'm not going to. I'm still looking at the diagram here with the pink and the different colors. That 27-foot easement is property that has been borrowed from Lot 1A, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm not an attorney, but I think I do understand that anyone has a right to grant anyone else an easement. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm sure there are a few restrictions to that rule, but yes.
Okay.
As long as you had access to the property and ownership of the property you were granting.
So when I'm like I asked before, if this 27-foot easement is given, this does give a way out from Lot 3A.
Yes, and that was specifically created for that reason. We specifically wanted to include area within Lot 3A that was already subject to the Ring Road Agreement.
Okay. Is it proper at this time to ask city position from our attorney? Madam Chair? Or
Yes, go ahead.
I'd
Mr.
like to answer my question first about whether when one party has a right to give another party an easement if it's from their party from their property to another person's adjoining property, as long as you don't violate any kind of prohibitions against maybe crossing a road or something. I don't know.
So Robert Cabello with the City Attorney's Office. So I understand your question. You're asking.
So do I need to swear you in, or are you okay?
Go ahead and swear me in.
Pardon?
Madam Chair, can you please swear me in?
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gordon, so I can understand your question. You're asking, can two parties obviously two parties can make an agreement for an easement pending some restriction about, other easements or other things like that. However, if you're asking, can two parties...
Could you get just a little closer to the microphone?
If you're asking, can two parties make an agreement to go into a third person's property, an easement, that's not the case.
I'm not talking about that. These are adjoining properties.
Okay, two adjoining properties can make an agreement, but you cannot two parties cannot make an agreement for an easement to go into a third party's property.
But this easement here, as I see it, is really part of Lot 1A. It's not touching the property. It's where it's not going down the Ring Road, that bottom portion that's open here that's not colored in pink. This easement is taken from property that is from Lot 1A.
No. Chair Thomas, Commissioner Gordon, I understand that, but it is the position of the city attorney's office that you cannot just change the legal description of properties, create another lot, and then give an easement to a third party's property through an easement through two adjoining properties.
And Madam Commissioner, Commissioner Gordon, if I may respond, I think that you raise a great point here in that PDG owns both of these properties. It is able to provide an easement at some point or another, whether it's now or whether it sells one of the lots in the future, it is able to provide that easement. And because that access already exists where that easement is proposed to be located, that access is already existing to Ring Road. Nobody has ever disputed that lots 1A and 1B, in whatever iteration that they have had over the years, have always had access to Ring Road. And so I think that your point is well taken in that regardless of whether PDG owns both of them right now and then sells one of them later, it is able to grant an access easement right there between those two property lines.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Guerrero?
Yeah, just a quick question. First of all, thank you so much for going over all this. I'm not a lawyer either, so appreciate you explaining all of this to us. So my question is regarding the mall. I mean, the mall is not responding. You mentioned that this is basically their final notice. What happens if, let's say this gets approved, moves on, and then the mall comes back and is like, hey, we never gave you guys permission for this? Like, I'm just curious what happens at that point.
So, I mean, I think that is an issue between the mall and PDG, pursuant to the agreement between those two private parties. And that is an issue that, you know, they can approach however they want to, and we can approach that as private parties moving forward. You know, but I think that the issue is that, number one, we've tried to approach them for a year and a half. Regarding this issue. And during that year and a half, we've been kind of stalled in terms of being able to develop these properties at considerable cost to my client. That is an issue that, you know, certainly we would deal with the mall on, but that the city would not have to be a party to.
Excuse me, Russ, I'm sorry, just facing on just what you just said to make sure. In this case, silence is not consent.
Well, so what's interesting in this circumstance is that we believe that under the CCNRs, if we were proposing, we had to submit a building proposal, for example, to the mall. They have 15 days in which to respond to that building proposal. So what's interesting under this current circumstance is that we were not required to ask them or to propose this subdivision or replat to the mall. So there's not a prescribed time period for them to respond. But if you were to apply the same time period that they have in order to respond to a building plans, which is 15 days, that has certainly long passed.
All right, I'm sorry to interrupt.
And then my other question, I just wanted to clarify. So at first you had mentioned that, so what we have here, the staff report is actually different than what you guys are proposing. So can you go into a little more detail about that?
So I think that maybe you're referencing the 3 lots into 4 lots issue that I raised at the beginning. And so I'm going to go, so this screen is the proposed replat that we submitted. And as you can see on the right side of your screen, that's the lot where Pecan Grill currently is. And so then we have 2 lots that we are proposing to create with this replat. One is Lot 1A, which is currently, it was where the Empire Buffet was. It's been taken down. Johnny Carino's was there. And basically what we're wanting to do is put another restaurant site there. And we're making that lot, as Mr. Pompeo mentioned, a little bit bigger because of the increased parking requirements that the proposed restaurant wants to have on that property. And so then we would also have Lot 3A, under which there would be additional commercial development. So that's kind of what the proposal is. We're essentially wanting to create 2 lots out of what we already believe is 2 lots.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sarah, did you want to say something?
And I do as well.
Madam Chair, I would like to clarify. The representative is correct in the fact that the request is showing that it's from 3 to 4 lots. That is a misinterpretation of it. However, in the summary of the request, per replat number 4, Lot 1A became 1 lot. So in the request, when the applicant submitted, if this was going to be 2 lots to 2 lots, then that would be a replat, which is a lot line adjustment. In this case, we are taking Lot 1A, which is 1 lot, and a tract of land, and making 2 lots is what we're creating by this subdivision. That's why it's considered an alternate summary subdivision. So number 4 for Mesilla Valley Mall replat number 4 eliminated the lot line that runs parallel through this property as part of the aerial map. So that is confirmed as part of the applicant's subdivision proposal. Otherwise, the lot line would be showing through the middle of Lot 1A and being adjusted over. So we are going from basically 1 lot and 1 tract to 2 lots. That's why we're having to go through the alternate summary subdivision. And I think to clarify is, the reason staff standpoint is saying that we're changing the legal description that was filed, saying Lot 1A had a legal description. When you adjust Lot 1A and separate that by creating Lot 3A and giving them access from a portion of what was existing off of Ring Road, that description has now changed from that replat. Therefore, that would need to be amended. Thank you.
Say that last part again. It would therefore be that last sentence.
The agreement listed Lot 1A and 2A of Mesilla Valley Mall replat number 4. Based on that agreement, when you create number 5, you have now adjusted what was existing for Lot 1A. That's where staff's standpoint is we've adjusted that legal description to reflect something different, and so the agreement would now need to be amended to show those changes.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've heard in discussion the ideas of 2 lots becoming 3, 3 lots becoming 4. And I'd welcome more discussion on your part, legal and city legal, on your position versus the city position. It seems like there's still a gap between the 2 positions, and I'd like to hear it one more time.
Sure. And Madam Chairwoman, Commissioner Smith, I think that there is some clarification that needs to be had on that issue. However, I don't think that we have 2 different ideas of what the outcome would be with this replat. So as I mentioned a moment ago, and I think that you can look at the aerial map that was provided to you with the staff report, as well as the zoning map, which shows 2 separate lots. And like I said, my client has been paying taxes on 2 separate lots. So I think that there is some question as to whether that vacation of that lot ever actually went through. And I don't know, I don't think that it actually makes a difference in the outcome of this circumstance, whether we start out with 2 lots and a tract of land or 1 lot and a tract of land. What we all agree on, I think, is that what we are proposing is that we end up with 2 lots within the subdivision. And so at various points, there have been 2 lots, whether there are right now or whether that happened, whether that line was vacated in 2004 or whenever it was. At various points, there have been 2 lots right there in the subdivision. So we're not creating anything that is historically different than what this subdivision has been. What we are doing is adding a bit of land to one of those lots. And if you look on the zoning map and the aerial map, that actually makes a lot of sense too, because that one lot is very small, as you might be able to tell. And so basically what we're doing is we're restructuring it so that the lots are a little bit more evenly distributed in terms of acreage and usability and suitability for the site.
Madam Chair, I'd ask for a compared discussion from Mark.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Smith, it's the city's position, since I've really not been able to give a full description. According to the city attorney's office, the city cannot, nor can any of its administrative subdivisions or other administrative groups, nor this commission have authority to grant an easement to another person's property. In this, we're basically saying we cannot permit this, we cannot allow, because we don't have that authority. Starting with the basics, with Resolution 79-335. There's been some discussion about that this resolution can somehow was able to create an easement prescriptively, and no easement can be created through resolution. An easement is created through a proper recording, an agreement of a proper recording of a documentation. That's not occurred in this case. Again, we do not believe you can grant an easement, and I've said this before, and I think Sarah Gonzalez really perfectly described. You cannot just change the legal description of properties and create this 3A and then grant through an abutting property an easement to that, and then create this other easement to a third property that's not owned by the city. As far as another thing, if there is an action by the mall, if this is granted, no, there is an action. I don't know if it will involve the city or not, because ownership of property, obviously, part of ownership of property is being able to decide what you want to do with your property. But also it's the ability to exclude. And the city could be named through an injunction or not. I don't know what the legal strategy would be. I don't obviously represent the mall or any of those interests. So that is something. As far as, again, it's simply put, the city cannot grant a third party access to something it does not own.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, sorry. Madam Chair, Commissioner Smith, if I might have an opportunity to respond. So we've spent some time talking about these CC&Rs that we believe do provide access, and that's what staff is relying on in terms of we would need to amend the CC&Rs. That's not our only position on access. We also believe that we have access by virtue of Ring Road having basically public access that is permitted to the public at all times. And so these properties have historically had access to Ring Road. Whether we are adding a little bit of land to one of those lots, I think does not materially change the use of that easement, and it's an easement that is basically provided to the public at all times. So I don't think that we need to solely rely on the CC&Rs, and in fact I think that is simply a way of explaining what our position is as to how that has been treated historically, and that we have provided, payments for maintenance on Ring Road. But I think that the access was granted by virtue of that being a public easement.
You think that you have a prescriptive use of those properties, access to Ring Road, as your properties have been used historically, as they've been applied and complied with through the CCNRs. Am I hearing you describe that you're maybe feeling you're losing privilege, losing rights by virtue of the replat?
I mean, to a certain extent, yes. So my client owns the piece of property that he acquired from NMDOT that is not currently subject to the CCNRs. And by virtue of this replat, what we're essentially doing is making that subject to those same covenants and restrictions, because even if only the legal description is applicable to the CCNRs, that now encompasses a portion of Lot 3A. And so essentially, Lot 3A would be, I think, by all practical purposes, subject to the CCNRs. And that's something that my client has done voluntarily. That would be basically providing for consistent use between Lot 3A and on the other lots that are surrounding the mall property and Ring Road. And essentially that lot would be subject to the same terms and conditions that all of the other lots that are subject to those CCNRs would be.
Follow-up question to you, or perhaps to Mr. Pompeo, where you have tried to improve your position for using this land, where you have a plan and have invested in an idea that develops the area, improves the area. Are you feeling that staff has come to enjoy that discussion of improvements aside from this platting? Does Sarah like their plan? Does it improve the use of the area? Have you had anything that says it's worse in your planning?
Madam Chairwoman and Commissioner Smith, respectfully, I don't believe that I or my client has taken a position as to whether staff has enjoyed this or not, or whether staff has a particular feeling one way or the other about whether this proposed development improves the site or not. I can defer to Mr. Pompeo for his conversations with staff, but I don't believe that I would characterize that one way or the other, frankly.
Mr. Pompeo?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commission. My conversations with staff have been, the staff has a position that the development plan of this property, its use is the commercial buildings, restaurant, parking lot, et cetera. I believe staff is in concurrence with the use of that. I think that they've never said that they weren't. I think the issue before us is whether or not Lot 3A can have access to Ring Road. It's our position that by virtue of the 79-335 resolution, remembering there was a trade of public property, public right-of-way for a private easement. Best summarize it by saying, let's say that we took Lot 1A and made it into 5 lots rather than 1 lot. I believe that staff and the applicant would have a varying opinion as to whether those 5 lots had legal access for its development for commercial property. I submit to you, it doesn't matter how many lots we create, whether it's 1 or 10 or 5, all of the lots or the 1 lot would have access to Ring Road by the simple virtue of the 79 resolution. In my opinion, that's where the analysis, and I'm not an attorney, I'm a civil engineer, that's where the analysis of legal access stops, because the city does not have any position when it comes to private CC&Rs. It would be as if you did a slight adjustment and the lot changed from Lot 1A to Lot 1A1. And then we would say, well, you don't have access because Lot 1A1 is not defined in any CC&Rs. Once again, I think we have to go back to 1979. We need to look at the creation of Ring Road. We need to look at the intent of the creation of Ring Road and see that our property is being developed in a commercial manner, a manner that is consistent with all the other commercial areas around it. So I believe, once again, to go back to the beginning, just to reiterate my position, I believe the staff has no issues whatsoever with the commercial development of this property or with the schematic plan that was presented in my presentation. We're just simply talking about that access issue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Nichols?
Yes, Larry Nichols, Community Development. Most of the discussion that has been brought forward this evening had to do, and to answer your question, Commissioner Smith, we view properties that are submitted to us, or proposals that are submitted to us, to see if they comply with the zoning regulations and their development regulations. And then after that, we get into the building regulations and permitting, by the way. The client has found that he needs to develop this property in a certain fashion, and that included a larger lot for the proposed development of the eatery or the restaurant. I think a lot behind that, to do with that, was he needed to have a certain number of parking spaces for the size of the structure. And so those lot lines had to be adjusted. And that would have also created a need, I believe, for a second access. It's true what the attorney, his attorney has presented, that those lines have had access for a long time, had an access, not necessarily multiple accesses. And I think that's one of the reasons that the staff has taken the position that they have, that in order to substantiate and support this development, those accesses needed to be provided. You've presented testimony tonight that's saying it's not a matter of the city to be involved with this at all, but I would submit to you it is. And I guess one last comment I would make is I think there has been activity on that site. I think there's been some clearing and grubbing. I know there's been some curb cuts made. And all of those activities should have had a permit before the activity began. And I would ask the client, did you acquire a permit for that?
And so, Madam Chairwoman and Mr. Nichols, thank you, and respectfully, we had a meeting which you were present, and I was present, and my client was present, several staff members were present in the middle of December, and that very issue was discussed. The only curb cut that has occurred is on my client's property, and it's my understanding, and I can refer to my client and check with him on this. At that very meeting, we all, it was our understanding that the issues with Lot 1A were, I mean, Lot 1A is Lot 1A. And or 1B. But that existing lot was permitted and platted and already within the subdivision that is existing. It did not need to be a part of the replat, and that permits could be pulled for that lot. It's my understanding that they were, or you went through a process.
We do have a demolition permit that was pulled.
We would need you on the mic. So my client is telling me that there was a demolition permit that was pulled shortly after the meeting that we had in December. And you're going to have to be sworn in.
I don't think so.
So I need to swear you in.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Go ahead. State your name. State your name.
My name is Michael Dixon. I'm the president of Prestige Development Group, PDG Prestige Inc., also the owner and the applicant in this scenario. I thank you for your time today. I'd like to address a few things while I have a moment to discuss this and talk with you all. As far as not having a permit for improvements, that is not true. We do have a demolition permit, which allows us to do the work we're doing on the site. Mr. Sandoval, who's also present this evening in this chamber, was a gentleman who I've hired to pull the permit, and I've paid him to do so. We have a contract that's binding between the parties and a permit on record along with insurance. It was notified with the city with a notice to proceed, along with a SWIP permit that we've also been delivered by the city as well for a masquerading operation for the MDOT tract. Additionally, as part of our construction operations, when we started this off, there's an email between one of my staff members and Mr. Dolan, who's present tonight as well, from the mall, and their request was to install a secondary access to help alleviate the traffic that would be a concern of trucks coming in and out of the first existing access between the Pecan Grill and our tract. Along with that email, there was also concern about damage being done to Ring Road, and that they wanted us to make sure that we took care of that, and we would be responsible for any and all repairs that went along with that. Accordingly, we also got a drone video. We flew the Ring Road around the mall to make sure we could survey the damage and the current status of the road before we started. We have that video as well if it needs to be submitted to you guys for approval. So we have done everything we've been asked to. We've gone through all the due diligence. We haven't just done this as a fly-by-night operation. We've checked the boxes. We've gone above and beyond trying to get this project approved. A couple of things have been asked, and I'd like to go ahead and address those while I have the moment to speak. It was asked by Mr. Gordon, Commissioner Gordon, what will happen to this property if this doesn't get approved? This property will remain vacant, just like the Mesilla Valley Mall is. It won't be redeveloped. We won't do anything with it. It will sit here for eternity. I believe we have the rights for this access, for this easement that is created between a property that I own both properties. I'm not encumbering a third party's property. I simply put in a curb cut that was for construction activities, which is now will be converted into a permanent access. We're not encumbering the mall's property. I haven't created an easement on a third party's property. I've created an easement between two tracts of land that I legally owned. I also have recorded an easement between the two tracts with the county. It's a legal document recorded with the county. The city staff has failed to recognize that as a legally binding agreement. So what perplexes me in this whole situation is that they have the right to make a decision on what they will or will not recognize as a binding document, whether it's a replat number 4 of the lot or whether it's this agreement. I've taken the steps, I've checked the boxes. This is something that I've done several times within this city and within this community and throughout all communities. Thank you very much.
And Madam Chairman, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Nichols.
We normally, the Community Development Department, zoning and permitting, don't normally issue permits on parcels of land that have not had decisions approved, and such as this one. I would like, and we would issue that permit to a licensed contractor. I'd like to ask Mr. Sandoval if he would come to the podium and verify that he had pulled a permit for the work that is being done on the site. You have to swear him in.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
Thank you.
Hello, for the record.
You might want to raise the podium a little bit so you can get closer to the microphone.
My name is Gabriel Sandoval. I'm the owner of G. Sandoval Construction. And we were contracted with Prestige Development to do the demolition on the existing building, which was at one time the Empire Buffet. So yes, we did pull a permit for a demolition, and that is all the work that has been completed on site.
So, Mr. Sandoval, you're stating that, yes, the demolition of that took place, what, 2 years ago? Or?
Oh, no.
A year ago?
Within months, probably completed within months.
Within months.
Yeah.
And you've done no demolition of the curb on the ring road, or you've done no permit for a curb cut or anything of that nature? Or is there any site work like fill or any of that work being performed on the remainder of the land?
Right now, it's just really just keeping the dirt watered down and everything which was on that one particular lot. That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Commissioner Gordon?
I just have a question for council. This is a suppose you had been successful in your contact with Mississauga Valley Mall, with the owners. I guess the only result of that, if you had come to an agreement to give your client access, it would have either been through this proposed easement, right? Or perhaps some easement across that piece of property that is below that curved line that goes vacant down to Ring Road. Is that correct? That would be the only other two ways out of there.
Right. I mean, so it's our position that we didn't have to get an agreement with
I didn't mean
the
that.
mall.
I mean,
however, if we were to get an agreement with the mall, it would be for the use of Ring Road and basically the addition of this land to the CC&Rs. Like I said before, I think that we, by all practical means, add this land to the CC&Rs because a portion of this land is included within the legal description that is subject to the CC&Rs. So I think by all practical means that would be subject to those already. I'm going to defer to the city staff for one moment.
Yes, Sarah, you wanted to say something?
Madam Chair, the representative for the mall is actually here, so I think we would like to hear at least what the mall has to say in response to the applicant's proposal before we keep going forward with the decision. And then just as a reminder, we are here just primarily for the access point to be granted between basically the developer and then the applicant who is requesting that portion, since the city does not own it.
Thank you. Yes, that was my next question. Is there someone here from Mississauga Valley Mall? Yes, would you come forward, please? I need to swear you in. Do you swear and affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
Thank you. Would you please state your name?
First off, thank you for allowing me to address you. I appreciate that. There's a couple of points I want to make. I did not find out about
Can you state your name, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. James Dolan. I'm the general manager at Mississauga Valley Mall. And just a couple of things. I did speak with Mr. Dixon back, I want to say it was 2018. We had a conference call with my then supervisor, Kelly Howden, our construction VP, myself, and several of Mr. Dixon's employees. At that time, we listened to what they had to say, and he was right. They talked about doing the drone over the ring road and checking the condition, things like that. Now, I summarized all this information, and I sent it to my corporate office in Syracuse, New York. They reviewed the information, and they said that they were not interested in doing anything at that time, and I believe I conveyed that information to Mr. Dixon back in 2018. I later spoke with him on the phone, and I said that, corporate told me no, and there was nothing I could do about it, and I gave him the phone number to our corporate office. So, and I believe he called up there several times, and they may not have answered the phone, I don't know. But as far as the easement goes, they did go ahead and cut our curb, and I don't believe that that was covered by the demolition permit that they received, if they did receive one, because that curb was our property. They already did cut it, and they have removed it. So I did get a bid on replacing it, but, pending the decision here, we'll see what happens. Also, I have a copy of the agreement that was the covenant that talks about the parcel 1A, and there is an easement agreement on that. And I think the intent at that time, it was a smaller parcel. They weren't combined at the time. I'm not sure. I can only go on what I've read, but there is a section that says that I think it only allows an 8,000 square foot building, one building of 8,000 square feet maximum. So that's designated in here. It also talks about the $125 a month ring road, but that's just for that one parcel. It doesn't cover the other parcels that are involved. And I think that the concern was, as it was mentioned earlier, as you come off Telshire Drive, there's not a lot of distance. So I think the concern is the amount of traffic if you were to add three additional restaurants there. So, and I noticed that on the easement that they drew up, it does go out to our property, and I don't know whether that includes our property or not, but we did not agree to that at all. So, again, I did tell Mr. Dixon back in 2018 that they were not interested in it. So, and I don't think that they've lost any rights because they do have the right to the one parcel. They do have that easement. So, I wasn't real prepared. I just found about this yesterday, so I apologize for that. And again, thank you for listening to me. Do you have any questions?
Any questions or comments from up here? Commissioner Smith?
Madam Chair, thank you. I'm not sure that I understand what was the answer, not interested in doing anything. Doing anything for what or under what conditions?
The Declaration of Covenant allows them to put one building there, and I think it may even say restaurant. I'm not sure. I don't recall, but I think I heard someone say that you have a copy of that. So it does allow one building to a maximum of 8,000 square feet, and that's what the current easement involves. So
Gotcha. It wasn't an invitation for you to develop something or any action on your part.
Right. I don't think that ownership is concerned with adding one building there. If it's within the zoning requirements. I mean, it's a parking requirement. And as a matter of fact, I think when we talked back in 2018, they asked that they wanted to purchase that little sliver of land that we have there, although they did not mention a price. And then they also said that they might want to use some of our parking lot. So that was a concern with pedestrians crossing the ring road at night after dinner or what have you.
The movement of easement, the movement of access cause you any concern?
That I don't have a feeling on it, but our corporate office was concerned about it. They didn't convey that information to me.
I think in passing they stipulated that it was an improved safety, that it moved it further away from the
right
ingress.
When we originally talked about it, they talked about using some of our parking spaces because they wouldn't have enough for 3 restaurants or something like that, as I recall.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you.
So just to follow up on Commissioner Smith, so this was a discussion in the past about 3 restaurants? Was that your understanding that what they were talking about?
Yes, ma'am. And I think I printed that off. I still have that email, if I can find it.
And what about what they're asking now, which is a restaurant with more parking so that they don't have to use any parking from the mall?
I have not seen this information. I don't know if anybody at my corporate office has seen it either. But I have the original one that they presented.
But it doesn't look like what they're presenting tonight.
No, ma'am, it does not.
Okay, so that was a different discussion. Okay.
That's correct.
Do you have any idea why corporate has not seen any of this, or you haven't seen any of it?
I don't know that. The notification from the city was sent to the bank in Dallas, and they just let me know about it today. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I apologize for that.
Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, so potentially a few things, but while I have you, sir, first, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming and giving us what help you're able to. So what I'm going to share is more of a comment for the record, and that I hope you can communicate to the owners of the mall. But this is unfortunately very unhelpful on the part of the mall ownership in this process. It leaves the city in quite a precarious situation here. Given that Mesilla Valley Mall has very recently lost one of its original anchor tenants on the same side that this kind of development would be going on, I would think that the ownership of the mall would have a serious stake and could otherwise be more helpful in this. So I just want to state that for the record. But thanks again for your input today.
If I could make a comment on that, you know, I think 20 years ago, Sears may have had 6,800 stores or something to that effect, and now they're down to about 150. So we've been anticipating the closing of our Sears store, and we have been actively seeking to lease it over the past year and a half, and we have 2 tenants that'll take the entire building. One, I think, is already approved in their leasing committee, has already approved the site and the location. And so we're negotiating the terms with them, and that would be a 25,000 square foot user. And then the second user that we have on the line is 35,000 square feet. And they went to their primary committee, and I believe it was approved there. And then it's supposed to go to a secondary leadership committee for like a rubber stamp approval, and that's mid-March. So we hope to start construction within the next 2 months. But I understand your point, and I appreciate you bringing that up. So that you know, we have actively been doing that, and outside of the Sears building, we're about 80% occupied in the mall. So we're not a dying mall. Sure. I think this is a viable community, and I think the mall is doing very well. You know, considering we're in a secondary, and some people say a tertiary market. So with a population of 100,000. I think the mall's in really good shape. So,
yeah, no, I appreciate that, and that's actually good news what you're saying about that anchor tenant. However, my comments still stand. The ownership of the Mesilla Valley Mall, nevertheless, remains extremely unhelpful in this situation. But thank you for that. Beyond that, I have a question actually for the legal representation. I'm curious to know, if this body were to deny this today, what legal recourse remains for your client to proceed?
Well, I think that we would appeal this decision.
Okay, and so please help me. This is from my understanding of process as well. What does that process look like going forward?
I would need to look at our options as to whether we are able to appeal straight to district court, but I think that probably we would be appealing to the city council.
Okay.
Yes, it's my understanding we'd go to city council first, and then, if not resolved there, to district court.
Okay. And just hopefully so you'll understand my question, it's just that I hope that you can appreciate the difficulty in this body having to try to sift through this. We are not lawyers. This is a very difficult, touchy issue for us to have to contend with, but I did want to understand what, if any, recourse you have going forward that you can try to pursue this. My next question is going to be for the city attorney, actually. I'm curious, in this case, if this body were to actually vote to approve this, what is the potential liability that the city takes on by doing this?
Madam Chair, Councilor Sanchez, Commissioner Sanchez, sorry. Again, like I indicated before, I'm not the attorneys for the mall. I don't know what they would, as far as their legal strategy, if, for example, they would file an injunction or some sort of other lawsuit against Ms. Morrow's clients and us. I really couldn't predict that part of it for you, although it's potential. There's a potential for that.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not asking you to predict it. I'm not asking you to speculate on strategy or anything. What I am asking is, from your legal expertise, what can they do?
Okay, I mean, they could file an injunction. They could file a lawsuit against the city. I mean, that's like the mall. They could do those things.
Okay. And I hope you can appreciate that the reason for my question here is just making sure that we understand, especially myself, exactly what's at stake here, depending on how we vote or not. I have to be quite honest with you. Personally, I don't see any issue with doing this. I think it's actually incredibly sad and laborious and overly scrutinous to have to ask or go through this kind of process. At the same time, I have to be honest, I'm not a lawyer. I can't sift through this. I don't care to speak to the original intent of the resolution or whether or not it legally grants you the ability to do this. So I know this may not sound particularly helpful for anybody, but this is not a good position for us to have to be in to try to make a decision on something like this.
Thank you very much. Ms. Morrow, this body cannot approve, we cannot do something different than what staff did unless we have been given some new information that was not considered in the earlier process. Have you given us any new information that we in the city did not have before?
Madam Chairwoman, and respectfully, yes, I do believe that I've given you additional information. So first off, I clarified what we are asking for through this process, which is different than what the staff report says that we are asking for in this process. We have provided argument.
So can you, sorry to interrupt, but can you state what that is, what you're saying, you're clarifying that what is you're asking for that's different than what the staff thinks you're asking for?
Of course. So the staff report, as I mentioned earlier, states that we are requesting 4 lots. We are not requesting 4 lots. We are requesting 2 lots. And that's important from a standpoint of historically there have been 2 lots in this situation, whether there are or are not currently, that there have historically been 2 lots. So that's an important thing. The other important issue is that both of the lots that we are asking for have had historically access to Ring Road. And that is also an important issue. I have not seen anything that would require only one specific access point to Ring Road. And in particular, the resolution for creating Ring Road does not specify a certain number of access points that are permitted along Ring Road. So yes, and respectfully, I think that we have provided significant additional information this evening, both in argument and just by way of clarification. So, and to your question as well, and in response to some comments made by Mr. Dolan, I want to clarify that the covenants, the CC&Rs, were created in 2007. The vacation, whether it ever went through or not, between lots 1A and 1B was in 2004. So the reference and the legal description that is referenced in the CC&Rs is to the bulk of the property that is, 1A or 1A and 1B. It's the entirety of that. It's not some smaller version of one of those lots.
Okay, just let me get that part straight. So you're saying that the covenants were in 2007?
Yes, ma'am.
And the 2004 was when the vacation, so what happened at that in 2004?
So there was a replat in 2004, I believe. Oh, sorry, maybe 2001. So in 2004 or 2001, there was a replat that was taking that lot line out of lot 1A and 1B.
Can you show me that on the map?
Let's see. So basically on this one, the existing property layout, so that lot line is this dashed line right here in the middle of lot 1A.
Yes.
So it's that dashed line. So, I mean, like I said, we're still paying, taxes on 2 different parcels right there. As you can see from kind of the picture, the aerial picture that was taken on this, Empire Buffet was built, or Carino's was built right in the middle of that.
In the middle of where that dashed.
In the middle of where that dashed line is. And all of that area that is in Lot 1A, that is kind of that peach color, all of that is subject to the 2007 CCNRs and has access to Ring Road by virtue of the CCNRs. And I wanted to also take issue with a statement made by Mr. Dolan regarding the number of buildings on the property. There is no limit to the number of buildings on the property. There is a limit to the amount of square footage on the property, and that is on page 10 of the CCNRs that are already in your packet. And so while it's a limitation on aggregate square footage, it's not a limitation to the number of buildings on the property. I also wanted to clarify that, and this is consistent with the proposed property use that we have put in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. We are proposing one restaurant on this, not three, and we have been in communication with the mall regarding that proposed use.
So, so what's the square footage that's allowed?
Well, so on this one, there is a limit of 8,000 square feet. And however, I think that does not preclude the approval of the lot with the access that we've requested.
Explain that a little more.
Well, so just like I've said, so right now we have one restaurant that we are wanting to put on Lot 1A.
And how many square feet is that?
According to this, I think about 7,000.
Madam Chairman, this is Larry.
Yes,
Nichols.
Mr. Nichols.
It shows on your proposed design that if you'll bring that one up, it shows the square footage of the on Lot 1A, and then it shows a second retail area on Lot 3A of 7,200. So I don't know, my math would tell me that's like 14,400.
And so I think that the issue there is not the approval of the subdivision, and that is not an issue that staff has raised. Staff raised the issue of access, and that's what we're here about today. So if we were to move forward with building additional structures, that would again be an issue for the CCNRs. That would be an issue with the mall, and we would have to get into that with the mall. And that would not be something that the city would be able to enforce.
So the CCNRs are between this property, the applicant you represent, and the mall.
Yes.
And I used to be a city councilor, and when people came to me and said, oh, such and such is in the covenants, and so the city has to abide by that, I was always told that no, the city has no jurisdiction over any covenants. So that's what I find confusing here. If the covenants are between your applicant and the mall, I'm not quite sure why the city is involved.
I agree, Madam Chairwoman, and respectfully to staff, I absolutely agree with that position. The city, in particular with these CCNRs, cannot enforce them. And the reason for that is, and I think that there is a difference in some other CCNRs that the city might be able to enforce. And that difference was clarified in Village of Los Ranchos to Albuquerque versus Shively. And in that situation, that was a development which the CCNRs were required for the Village of Los Ranchos of Albuquerque to approve that development. So city actually required covenants in order to approve a subdivision. And because of that, the court essentially decided that that was additional zoning for that property. Basically, once it approved a plat that was combined with the required covenants that the city was requiring, that was essentially additional zoning over that property. That is absolutely not what these are. This was a private agreement that was entered into by private parties to which the city has no dog in this fight. So that's the position that we have taken all along in order to try to move this project forward and in order to try to work with city staff regarding what its positions were on these. We've tried to work with them all in order to keep this project moving. But unfortunately, and I think as Mr. Dolan confirmed, we have not gotten anything back from them all. And we can't just stall on this property use because of another private landowner who refuses to engage with us.
Thank you for that information. Let's see, I'd like to ask Mr. Cabello to comment on the CC&Rs and the role of the city.
Me, I think it's me. Chair Thomas, certainly. As far as the CCR, yes, it is a private agreement. However, they're asking for us to permit access. Again, and I've stated this before, the city attorney's position is that we cannot permit access to property. We don't have control over it.
I can't quite hear you. Can you pull the microphone a little closer? We cannot provide access.
I'm sorry.
So, yeah.
Again, the city attorney's position is that we cannot provide, permit access to property we don't own or control. We don't agree with Ms. Morrow's position. I understand it is a private agreement. However, the way you look at this agreement, there's just no access for this other property that was created through a change in the description.
Thank you. Sarah, did you want to add something?
Madam Chair, and I also want to include that I think there is some confusion as far as this going from 2 lots that had access into what's being proposed as these 3 lots. As you can see on the screen that's provided before you, where Lot 1A is where the lot line was vacated. So there is no discrepancy that the planning department or city staff disagrees that Lot 2A and Lot 1A.
Can you show that map as you're talking about it?
Right here on the current screen, Lot 2A and Lot 1A do have access. Per the agreement in 2007, it says these 2 lots have access. What the applicant came forward with is now creating an additional lot off of Lot 1A. So we're not saying that these 2 lots don't have access. We're saying that creation of a 3rd lot is not part of Lot 1A or Lot 2A's legal description. So by changing those legal descriptions, that agreement is no longer valid. So then it's to go back to the covenants that are placed on the property. So either that legal agreement that was done when this replat was done in 2001, because we do know it's filed because it's part of the applicant's representation of their new plat. So we do know that the file has been documented. With Lot 1 changing and just adjusting lot lines, it's not saying that these 2 existing lots had access. They didn't. Lot 3 was just purchased, just created, and then included into the subdivision. So the 2 lots who originally had access is Lot 1A and Lot 2A, not Lot 3A. So by encompassing Lot 3A, the line was just moved over to allow Lot 3A access. But that changed that legal boundary for Mesilla Valley Mall replat number 4. Had that legal description not been in there, I don't think that staff's point would have been whether or not the access was being provided from an adjacent lot or something that had access. Then it would go definitely to the covenants. But because that legal description gave us Lot 1A and Lot 2A. It did not describe Lot 3A because that was not part of this development at the time. That's where the discrepancy comes in.
Thank you. And then could I ask, Ms. Morrow, you keep saying that it's 2 lots to 2 lots. Can you explain that argument again?
Well, and so that, Madam Chairwoman, is part of the issue of whether that vacation actually was ever finalized. And so, like I said, my client's paying taxes on 2 lots. The aerial map and the zoning map included in your packet show this as continuing to be 2 lots. And so that's where my 2 lots to 2 lots comes from. I think that historically, these have been 2 lots, and we are asking them to continue to be 2 lots. And so whether they are right now or whether they were, you know, at some point in the relatively recent past, we are wanting 2 lots. That's what we're asking the commission for today. And just to clarify, so on the proposed property use, so Lot 3A actually includes, and like I said before, some of the property that was already included within Lot 1A. And so I just wanted to clarify that a little bit, and that was done in order to make sure that it was subject to the covenants and restrictions.
Commissioner Gordon?
Is there any prohibition just to put a cut between 3A and 1A?
So, no, I think that the issue there is traffic pattern. And I think that the issue there is also whether cross-access between the lots would be sufficient for approval. One of the things that we were told through this process was by staff was that simply creating kind of cross-access was not going to be sufficient. We created that cross-access, and that is on file with the county, but that we were told was not sufficient.
Sarah, is that true that they prohibited?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gordon, that is correct, because currently what's on file is a legal agreement that's filed with the county giving access from the mall property to Lot 1A and Lot 2A. In that legal description, it does not include Lot 3A. So you're asking someone to basically adjust the easement agreement that was already filed with private parties and add an additional lot. So you cannot take land from someone else and give that to yourself as an easement. So essentially, from Lot 1A and Lot 2A, they did file the agreement because we did receive it, which was from Lot 1A to 3A. In that process, though, there is nothing from the mall saying we are now giving Lot 3A access. And that's where the original access was created.
And if I may have an opportunity to respond, Madam Chairwoman, Commissioner Gordon, I was actually referring to a different access agreement. We filed an access agreement providing access from one lot owned by my client to another lot owned by my client in order to achieve exactly that, just making sure that there was access between the 2 lots. Frankly, right now, that's not a problem. He owns both lots. And so, you know, right now that's not an issue. At some point, he's going to want to sell one lot or the other. That may happen at different times, and we would want to make sure to reserve an easement between the 2 lots. So that's the access easement that I was referring to that I said was on file with the county.
Thank you.
Sarah, you had more to say?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Gordon, that is the access agreement that I'm referring to. Basically because that access agreement is given to property, but it was not confirmed with the original property owner who provided the additional access in the first place. So essentially, the original access came from the mall property to lots 1A and 2A. 1A, which is the agreement that was filed after, was given from 1A to 3A, which is what the applicant's referring to as far as giving themselves access. You can give yourself access to properties you own if you have legal access to something. However, in this case, they received legal access by the mall property for only lot 1A and 2A. There was never a legal description changing it to saying we give you access to an additional lot. That is what we're referring to. You're not able to give yourself land or access to land through someone else's easements agreement.
And so, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioner Gordon, there again, we come back to the city's position regarding the covenants and restrictions. And that goes back to all of the arguments that I've been making this evening.
Any more comments or questions? Yes. Did you want to say something?
Yes, ma'am, please.
State your name again.
Michael Dixon.
Yes, go ahead.
In response to a few of the comments that Mr. Dolan made, he's in an effort to correct the issues we had with parking and pedestrians crossing over Ring Road. That was the reason why we increased this parcel to the size it is now, to allow for enough parking to house the people for this building. Additionally, by creating this parcel as it sits now, puts it in compliance with the CCNRs and the city's current code for parking enforcement. As the way the building sits now and as it sat previously to when we purchased it, the building did not sit in compliance with either the local code nor the CCNRs. So adding the additional space inherently had to happen to make this property come into compliance with the local code and to come into compliance with the CCNRs. The parking code for the local code is basically 4.5 per thousand for this use, I believe. And I may be incorrect, Sarah can correct me. And I know that the CCNRs are 6.62 parks per 1,000 square feet for this type of use. So that's why we had to bring this property into conformance. The size of the building is actually smaller than the actual size of the Empire Buffet by 306 square feet. When we demolished that, that's including the patio because it had a very large patio on the east side of the property, which was demoed. When you take the overall footprint of the building, we have shrunk the footprint of the building and we have increased the parking, therefore solving the problem of public safety. Additionally, by moving the access down further off Telshore, we've also alleviated a lot of the congestion that is on this current access to the properties. As we're all aware, in the evenings, if we try to pull into this property, when both of these restaurants were operating, it was a nightmare to get in and out. The entrance isn't wide enough, so on and so forth, and the way that I believe that the road curves versus the way that the access easement curves, the driveway curves, creates a problem for vehicular traffic to get in and out of the site. Additionally, it is also my understanding that with the current CCNRs and the current, under Section 7, letter A, it specifically gives me the exclusive right to replat, subdivide, expand, or reduce these properties with no further, without any question or without any approval from the mall at all. It's specifically laid out in Section 7 of the agreement. Because of that section was the reason why I put this project together. Because understanding the CCNRs, I never knew I would have this problem. Understanding the CCNRs, I had the exclusive right to move these lot lines around without having to get approval from the mall. The mall does have the approval and denial rights over my buildings, or what I put on the buildings. I can't put up a bingo hall. I can't put up, a trashy magazine store or something like that. Further, I can't put up something that's also going to be obnoxiously loud, such as a nightclub, which I haven't done here. We're putting up a 7,500 square foot building and a 7,200 square foot retail building, and that's it. That is the only denial process that they have if we're reflecting back to the CCNRs. What we're asking for is that one of two things really happen. Either the commission approves this lot line adjustment with our new proposed access, or the commission approves our lot line adjustment and recognizes the existing cross-access and parking agreement we have between the two properties that I currently own. I think that all this other stuff has got kind of, there's been a bunch of other stuff that we've discussed tonight because it's a complicated issue and there's a lot of moving pieces here. But I believe that those are the two items those are the two things that we have to consider today. I have a legally recorded document that on two properties that I own that I have already recorded, that are filed with the county, that give access to these two documents. I've done this on other properties in the city. I did it on Valley Vista Plaza on Avenida de Mesilla and Valley. I did it at the 4301 East Loman Boulevard for the new outpatient clinic for Mountain View Hospital. I did it on Rincon and North Rise when I developed the urgent care, the Verizon, and we're about to break ground on another property. I have the same agreement that I've used the 3 other times in this city, and I've never had a problem with it. And I own all of it. So the reason that it becomes an issue now, I have a hard time understanding. It's a new set of rules, and this has been ongoing since 2010. I started Valley Vista Plaza in 2010. It's the exact same agreement I used. I got it from the city, as a matter of fact, in 2010, and I've used that same agreement 3 other times. And it's never, ever been a problem until this time.
But unfortunately,
We don't have
this document.
Yeah, go ahead. We don't have the CC&R document.
You have, I'm talking about the access and the cross-access and parking agreement.
No.
Yeah, we worked with Robert Kyle to develop the.
But I mean, we don't have it in our packet.
Oh, we have it. I'm sorry. They have a what? I don't know. I don't know what that is.
I have that agreement on my computer right now, but I don't have it printed out. Is there a way that I can show that, is like with the use of the Elmo or something?
Well, it doesn't give us an opportunity to look at it at length and read it and try to figure out what it says. You know, you're asking us to take on faith, and it's very difficult. There's so many things that are complicated here that to make a decision.
And here's the thing. I think that while that exists as a product of my client's good faith in trying to work with this process. I do not believe that that is required for the approval of what's before you this evening.
But you're presenting it as an argument as to why we should oppose what this Department of is trying to tell you that you can't do it. I mean, I feel very badly about this in the sense that I don't want to see this property vacant. I think that this would be a very good project for the city. I think we need it. I suppose if the Mesilla Valley Mall suddenly it wound up with Costco walking in here and saying, okay, we're going to take over that space, you would have a heck of a lot of traffic. You wouldn't be too upset about that. So, but yet you stand here and you say, well, we're concerned about the traffic that this is going to provide. You're going to have just as much coming in off of Telshore, and it's going to be a problem. I don't know what's coming in there now, who you're making an agreement with, but it may give us that problem. And I just think that this is a very simple solution. I think that I can't believe that Mesilla Valley Mall hadn't gone along and said, this is fine. I mean, it's to their benefit. It brings people into the mall. I just think that I think Mesilla Valley Mall is being very selfish in this respect. I don't particularly like them not responding to the petitioner. I think they made more than ample efforts to try to get this resolved. And at some point, you just can't sit there forever and not do anything. I mean, I can understand their plight, and it puts a terrible onus on us to have to make this decision. I mean, there are certain legal ramifications which we have to look at, and certainly there are a lot of moral things that we have to think about. And that poses a problem, especially for me.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Gordon, in reference to the agreements that Mr. Dixon is referring to, a lot of times what we do tend to see is you will get cross-access agreements from your property owners. Unfortunately, in this case, there is a third party or a second party that's involved. And the properties that are on Rinconada, these are coming in as part of our plat reviews because they are owned all by one property, as opposed to, in this case, Ring Road is from a private entity, not the city. I don't think in the case if the city were to say that this was our property, we would have an issue with providing that access. But because we have a second party and it is a private road, we do not have the rights to guarantee an access point off of there. I think that's what the concern has become. If there wasn't a filed legal document, we would be referring back to the covenants that are on file, and that still would turn back into a private and developer responsibility to move forward. So I think it's moving this case forward in order to get to the next steps, in order for them to continue moving on, is where staff's position is.
But Sarah, if that's the case, why did the city even take this position? They should have just told them that we don't want to get involved.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gordon, we actually did work with Mr. Dixon on September 2nd of 2015 when he originally was looking at purchasing this property from NMDOT. He came into a pre-application meeting with staff. Planning staff did at that time allocate that there was no legal access provided if you were to purchase that property. There were several planning members within that meeting and identified that. When the case came back in, it was a different surveyor in 2018. There was a different application that came in at that point in time, and that's where we actually identified again that the property did not have legal access and that they would need to show us legal access in order for us to take in the application and process it. We then received our next application for the summary replat in 2019, towards the middle of the year as well. So this has been to staff's attention, and we were working with the applicant in the actual legal access process.
So we're at a point here where we could table this and say we want those documents and more information. Or we could agree with staff and say it's denied. Or we could say we think we've received additional information tonight that says that that there are existing documents that maybe should be paid attention to, and take the risk that the mall might come after us. Though as far as I can see, the discussions with the mall seems to be about some earlier project, so it's hard to know what would be the indications from this current project. So there doesn't seem to be any comment on that one. So, Commissioner Smith, were you going to add something?
No, I think I agree with you, Madam Chair. We're at a point where we either take a position with what we've heard, with new information, or we have a motion that changes it.
We don't have to have a motion to change it, do we?
Sarah, if we table this issue, how long will it take to get this back to us with additional information that they want to provide? All this paperwork that they keep referring to, the CC&Rs and things like that, and agreements that we don't have.
I don't know what's happening here, sorry. Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners, I'm going to step back to allow staff to talk, but I do believe that the bulk of the documents that have been discussed this evening are in front of you in the packet, and we've been referencing those repeatedly throughout. So I appreciate all of your time this evening, and I would respectfully request that you approve the replat that has been requested. Thank you.
And Madam Chair and Commissioners, I would agree with the representation by the legal department as far as the CC&Rs are not within regulations of the planning staff to regulate. As part of the documents you were provided, it was a file document in 2007, as well as what has been provided from the resolution from 79. Those are the two documents we are able to regulate as far as us being reviewing parties. Earlier, Commissioner Thomas had mentioned how we do not regulate covenances because that is not due to the city. Those are private entities and private parties that have to have those discussions. So the documents you did have in front of you were the documents in order to make the decision this evening. You would not have to make a motion to approve or deny. The motion has already been to approve. So if you choose to, let me go back to our presentation. If you choose to vote yes, please just provide the findings, and that would support the access being provided to the mall property. If you vote no, that is going to say that you are recommending staff's decision of saying legal access has not been provided.
So if we vote no, we're agreeing with staff, and if we vote yes, we're approving what the applicant wants to do.
Madam Chair, that is correct.
Okay, Ms. Morrow, could you come back up here?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman.
What would you say that you've presented tonight that's new that would allow this body to vote yes?
I think consistent with my earlier answer, Madam Chairwoman, I have provided clarification regarding what we are asking, and that is different from what the staff's report states. I've also provided clarification regarding what the kind of the makeup of, and I would point you to the maps, but we're out of that one now. So regarding the makeup of the two lots that we are requesting, because in staff's report, there is reference to, oh, thank you. So in staff's report, there is reference to not only 4 lots being created, but also that Lot 3A was just being entirely created out of the NMDOT tract. That is not the case. And the Lot 3A does have additional property that was already contained within the CC&Rs. I have provided a statement to you that is talking about the fact that we are intending for Lot 3A to be subject to the CC&Rs. That's information that you did not previously have, is my understanding, and is not included within the staff report.
Say that part again, that Lot 3A what?
Lot 3A, we are intending to be subject to the CC&Rs so that that is consistent throughout kind of the Mall Ring Road area, development area.
So you can do that on your own, make it subject to the CC&Rs?
So by including some of the land that is already within the legal description of the CC&Rs, that land is subject to the CC&Rs. And so because that land is going to be a portion of Lot 3A, for all practical purposes, that Lot 3A is essentially subject to those CC&Rs. And, you know, we get back to the legal description argument made by staff, but that is what we have presented this evening. I've also presented information to you regarding the council's and city's ability to enforce private CC&Rs. That is not a position that was taken by your staff, and that is supported by the New Mexico Court of Appeals decision in Village of Los Ranchos to Albuquerque versus Shively, because these CC&Rs are very different from those considered in that case, because these were not approved by council as part of a development plat. They were not required by the city for any improvement of a plat. They were simply an agreement between two private parties. And in addition to that, we have discussed the creation of the Mesilla Valley Ring Road. That was not a position that was taken by staff. In the staff's project description on page 2 of the staff's report, they discuss that this is a private road. However, it's also very important to note, and as I noted before, that while the road is a private one, it, quote, shall remain open to access by the public at all times. The CC&Rs, under the CC&Rs, the owner has the perpetual right to use Ring Road. The owner is the owner of Lot 1A and or Lot 1A and 1B, and has the perpetual right to use Ring Road. Like I said, the planning staff took the position that we were required to seek permission for this replat and subdivision from the mall. That is not consistent with the CC&Rs, and that even though we were not required to do so, we did, and that was confirmed by Mr. Dolan, that contact was made. So that is additional information provided by not only Mr. Pompeo, but myself, Mr. Dixon, and then confirmed by Mr. Dolan.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Okay, discussion or questions? Oh, Mr. Dolan, come ahead.
I don't mean to drag this out. I apologize. Just a couple of points I want to make as well. You know, when the mall ownership representative told him no back in 2018, it was a different site plan. We haven't seen this site plan. I office here in Las Cruces. I live here. I didn't see it. He could have sent it to me and I would have forwarded it. He has my email. He's called me before, so I'm available anytime. That's number one. Number two, and I apologize about the slip earlier about the buildings. I don't have my glasses. I was looking at the covenant and I didn't see it was buildings instead of building. But the reason that they mentioned the 8,000 square feet in there is because there's a ratio of cars per square footage. And they only granted the one entrance for the two parcels there, 1A and 2A. So that's the reason why, I think at the time, that's one of the main reasons they said no to anything else. So.
That last thing you said, one entrance to,
The covenant, the easement agreement that I've seen says the one entrance for the Pecan Grill and what was the Empire Buffet.
okay.
And additionally, if there's a restaurant inside the mall, it typically adds about an hour to a shopping experience, but the restaurants around the mall do not bring any traffic into the mall. We're surrounded by, Buffalo Wild Wings and McAllister's and two chicken places, and when people tend to stop at those places, they don't come to the mall, so that doesn't really help us. Restaurants outside the mall.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Discussion or questions up here? Okay. Shall we vote? Okay. Becky?
Board Member Smith.
Let's restate this, that if you vote yes, you're saying they can move forward with this project. If you vote no, you're agreeing with staff and saying that they cannot move forward.
Madam Chair, I have come to appreciate this administrative solution in a way that is expedient and meaningful, and I think it's proper information. I think the new information I've heard here is that the prescriptive use is within the CCNRs for what is described as 2 lots. I see that PD&G is describing that they've been in compliance with the CCNRs and plan to extend that. I like the initiatives that they have in the development of that corridor. I think it fits well for the city and for the community that is surrounding the mall property. I vote yes.
Board Member Muniz.
This is a hard one. I haven't made any comments, but I have been listening. I'm voting to deny. I'm voting no because the developer has interpreted some of the agreements to how he feels the city's interpreted agreements, how they feel. I think that the mall, the developer and the city, they need to get together and come back to us. They've asked us to make a very hard decision with legalities, and I'm denying it because I feel that the legalities and agreements weren't fully explained to me.
Board Member Sanchez.
So regrettably, this evening, I believe I've been asked to make a decision in which I would have to employ a legal expertise that I do not have. And so I'm not prepared to do that this evening. I say it's regretful because I do believe, sir, that city government has done a disservice here. It has not provided, through whatever course of history, what you need to be able to proceed with the business plans that you have. And I think that also does a disservice to the business community in Las Cruces. I also believe that the apparent silence on the part of the Mesilla Valley Mall ownership has also done a disservice to the business community in Las Cruces. However, as unfortunate as those things are, I still have to vote no. Based on, and I realize that you all have cited other legal documents today, but based on what the city is telling me, my decision can only be based on the documents that are provided in the packet that I have. And these documents do not allow for me to provide any reasoning by which I can vote yes for this. So I'm going to vote no, but I strongly encourage you to continue on in this process. I believe and I genuinely hope that this can be remedied by people in positions higher than mine. And I'm sorry for that, but I do vote no.
Board Member Guerrero.
All right. So this is a really hard choice to make, kind of for the same reason that some of my colleagues have said. So typically, I would just follow staff recommendations, but I will vote yes tonight, just for the reason that I feel like the applicant has presented enough evidence, as well as, just kind of back to a comment that Commissioner Sanchez made as well about the mall. I feel like that's a totally different issue that the city should not be getting involved. That's between the mall and the applicant. But I will say that it is disappointing, just because I know that I'm pretty sure Mesilla Valley Mall is just one of the many malls that this person owns. And this just kind of shows like, hey, we don't care type thing, because the applicant has tried to reach out. But just in summary, I will vote yes. I feel like, from a public safety stand, from a bringing more business, bringing more jobs, I feel like that is beneficial. Like I said, typically I would just follow what the city suggests, but I feel like, this time the applicant and Ms. Mara have made a just very good case. So I vote yes.
Board Member Gordon.
Based on our discussion this evening, which has gone on for well over 2 hours, and the presentation by both parties, I think certainly number one, that this definitely indicates our new Elevate Las Cruces. It certainly is in conformance with our new comprehensive plan that we just recently approved. The representative from Mesilla Valley Mall said that there was an intent on the part of the owners to sell the mall. Perhaps if the new owners come in and they might be very happy with what the petitioner wants to do. I think also that there is a lot of economic value here. There will be jobs. There'll be some revenue generated through tax. I don't want to see a vacant lot there forever. It's bad enough. We have to, excuse me, we have to see it now. And I certainly think that if PD&G is willing to run the risk of perhaps in the future having to deal with Mesilla Valley Mall in some kind of a conflict, I think that they will prevail, in which case I am voting yes.
Chairperson Thomas.
This has been a long discussion, and it's been very difficult. It's a lot of information to try to understand. At this point, though, I feel that I have a different understanding of what the applicant is asking for. I have, my past experience says to me that the city doesn't usually get involved with CC&Rs. I think that it would have been helpful to have the CC&Rs, but I tend to give more credence to the CC&Rs, and I think that we this going forward, this is a decision that's going to have to involve both the applicant and Mesilla Valley Mall. I don't think Mesilla Valley Mall has, like many people have said, really haven't stepped up. So I'd like to see this project go ahead, and I think you're going to encounter some other issues, but I think it's time for the city to step out of it. So I vote yes. So the applicant's proposal passes 4-2. Could we take a 10-minute break and come back for the last item? Motion to approve and a second.
I make a motion that we approve case number 19V00500143.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve this case, and we'll turn to Sarah for a presentation.
So before you is a proposed variance request for 5401 Longview Lane. Currently, the property is located at 5401 Longview. It is a single-family residence that encompasses 10 acres in size. It is zoned R1AC, which is single-family medium density conditional. The condition that's on the property is just to place utilities underground. The property was annexed and zoned in 2007. Here's a zoning map of the subject property. As you can see, it's kind of hatched. That's how we designate our conditional properties. The surrounding area is primarily residential. There's a few commercial properties located to the north, and then we do have our A2 properties that are located to the west. Here's a blown-up aerial map actually showing just the subject property at hand and showing how the single-family residence is located on the 10-acre property, and then where they're going to be proposing to put the additional home. So as stated, the applicant is requesting to put in a second single-family residence on the 10-acre parcel. Due to the property, the applicant has stated that they do have a fixed income, so this will help as far as their income goes. And then they're also closer to their son and their grandchildren in order to help out with watching the children as they are growing up and then going to school. Here's a site plan of the subject property. So as you can see, you have the existing home on the property, which is located here towards the south side. This would be on the west side is basically where your property line is. And then this would be the new home that is constructed on the property. Through review, staff did not find any health, safety, or welfare issues identified. However, there was a comment or a concern based on the fire department's request of an additional home being on the subject property because there is not a hydrant close enough to provide fire protection for the second home going in. Notice was sent out to all the surrounding property owners. We did receive one phone inquiry basically supporting the proposed variance if it were to move forward due to the circumstances of the property owner. However, with that, staff is recommending denial. We do have strict criteria in which staff can recommend approval for variances. The property is 10 acres in size and is zoned R1A, which currently already has a single-family residence, which is what is allowed by code right now. With that, it's also adding an additional one dwelling unit, does not propose any variance criteria as far as it does not bring economic value to the city. It does not show any topography constraints within the property. So when we look at our variance criteria as far as staff recommending approval, we're limited to what code is provided. Very short. With that, the applicant is recommending denial. So therefore, if you choose to approve the request, you would have to provide new facts of finding not found within your staff report. If you vote to deny, that would be basically staff's recommendation. You can vote yes with conditions or vote to table. The applicants are here as well if you have any questions or if any presentation that you would like to hear from them.
Madam Chairman, if I may. Sarah,
Mr. Nichols.
Thank you, Larry Nichols, Community Development. I think I heard you just say the applicant is recommending denial?
No, the applicant is present.
Yes. Did I mishear
No,
that?
staff is recommending denial.
Thank you.
Because of the variance proposal based on code criteria.
Questions or comments from commissioners?
So the applicant would like to state.
Oh, the applicant would like to speak?
position,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. Do you swear and affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
Okay, would you state your name, please?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Dennis Smith. I have to say I'm almost embarrassed to be up here after the last issues were dealt with, but here we go. I am the owner of, my wife and I are the owner of this piece of land, which is 10 acres. We have owned it for about 43 years and paid taxes on it for all those years, have gained nothing from it. and we're at the point now where we would like to be able to live on it. A couple of years back, our son was having some issues, and we helped him out by putting a house on the corner of it for him and his current wife to live in, and they're doing much better as a result of that. So we understand that there are rules, and based on those rules that planning has said that they did not approve of this. And I believe in rules, but I think there should be exceptions to some rules under certain cases. The rule is, as Sarah stated, 1 house per lot. This is not a typical lot. It's 10 acres. And I can understand that rule if you were trying to put multiple houses on a 1/4 acre lot or something like that. But we're asking for 1 more house on 10 acres. It would be a nice house. All the neighbors are encouraging us to move out there and be their neighbor. And we would really like to do that and need to do it. We're, as Sarah stated, getting up there in years. We would like to get to the point in our lives where we could be comfortable with our sons who live in the proximity of that and depend on them for help as we age. There was an objection from fire from a standpoint of the hydrant is over 600 feet from where we would like to put our house. 2 things I would like to say about that is, one, there are other homes further from from the site we would like to build on, and they are there. Also, we have received permission from Moongate Water to install a hydrant right on our property line. So that issue goes away completely. The other issue that fire pointed out is the road is not paved to the property. And again, that's true. Again, there are other homes in existence which live beyond, off of the same dirt road, and they have fire coverage. It's interesting to me that if we moved our building site onto the adjoining piece of property a few feet, literally, then there would not be an issue because it would be 1 house on each of the 2 pieces of land. The problem comes in 2 houses on 1 piece of land, when in reality, it would be closer for the fire department to come to. It would be easier to deal with than going 50 feet further or whatever to be on a separate piece of property just because the rules call for 1 per piece. And that is why we would really appreciate your consideration of this and give us the help and approval that we're asking for. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
I have a couple questions for Sarah. So there, on the second page of this packet under criteria for decisions, it says hardships are not considered personal or monetary. But on the next page, it talks about a physical hardship relative to the property, the potential for spurring economic development.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Okay, we're awake.
What's going on outside?
Automatic shutdown.
And then it says monetary considerations not as a whole, but relative to options available to meet the applicant's stated objectives when such options cause considerable monetary hardship under strict application of code provisions. So does that, to me, those 2 things are in conflict. One says not monetary and the other one says monetary.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, and that is why a lot of the times when we use a monetary standpoint, it's based on interpretation. And so that usually will come from our administrators as far as, is this a monetary hardship? Monetary hardships could come into place whenever you're seeing developments, a property owner has invested into something, didn't know regulations, didn't know that these were the cases, worked with someone else, they didn't divulge that information, kind of how when we bring our carports forward and we indicate, okay, they've worked with a contractor, didn't know they need a permit, it's in the wrong place. They've put in that monetary constraint, but it's still limited as to what they can use as far as monetary hardship. When we look at variances, it's based on a case-by-case basis. So in this case, is there a monetary hardship to basically place this home on this property, or could it be placed on a different property? It doesn't classify how you interpret it or how you regulate monetary standpoint. From anybody's standpoint, any variance comes forward is always a monetary hardship. But our code doesn't say that it's a monetary hardship to development or to anything being proposed. So we usually rely on the fact that we have topography constraints for variance, and it's going to produce economic hardship, or you're going to provide economic expansion within the city. Monetary is not defined in our code well enough to say that is a monetary hardship to someone's building something or being proposed because they choose not to put it on a different property or because they choose to place it on something they don't have. And so the variance criteria for monetary is very hard to regulate.
So I have another question then. So probably the Smiths purchased this property when it was part of the county, and then it got annexed into the city? Okay, and so...
Madam Chair, that's correct, yes.
So they would not have known when they were in the county that this was going to be an issue?
Madam Chair, also in speaking with the property owners, there could have been a time also when you were located in the county and they could have possibly subdivided this property, had no road improvements. The variance process allows them to go through the process to see if they can get a second home on the property without having to go through a subdivision process.
Right.
Because that would also lead to additional cost, and maybe that would come into where you would see that monetary hardship. Because they could separate the property and put a home on each one, but then we're limited also to the road improvements that would have to take place by that property owner. So through the county process and the ETZ, you were able to subdivide, not do road improvements, and so some of those roads are that way, or there would have been more possibilities, I believe.
And so so they're not, a variance doesn't require road improvements, but there's something about installing utilities underground. If they were granted the variance, would they have to install utilities underground?
Madam Chair and Commissioner, that is correct, but that's with any new development now. Back in 2007 and prior to that, any of the ordinances that went through City Council always had those as a condition. That was to alleviate all of the electrical lines that are going up and the power poles, because that started to limit people on basically the development of their property.
Right.
So that was just a general comment that was always added to any zone changes that came in. So in 2007, the property was annexed and then limited to that condition of that time. We no longer place those conditions because that's normal practice now.
Okay. Do you think that the Smiths, if they were given the time to do it, could put together an explanation of why this is a monetary hardship that we would be able to accept?
I would have to address additional staff to see if that was something we would be able to look at. When staff reviewed this as a whole, we looked at it from the three standpoints and could not find that it met with any of the criteria. That's why we said it did not meet any of those. If we would have found one that it would have met, we would have identified that. So all three were discussed. We did not find that any one of the three would have been supported by staff.
So the fact that they bought this when it was in the county and didn't expect these kinds of restrictions or this kind of cost doesn't count as a monetary consideration?
Madam Chair, I'm not sure what the county zoning designation was at the time either. So did the county zoning designation also say that only one single-family home unless subdivided was a possibility?
I'm quite sure it did not. Having worked on the county plan and knowing what the zoning was like before we passed the county plan, I can say that they would have not had any problems.
Right, and being when the city would have annexed them in 2007, the zoning would have been available, and that zoning has not changed, and the code has not changed since that time frame. So it would have been available to see that there was only one home permitted within that lot.
From 2007 on. Yeah, but they'd owned it for some time before that. So, comments from other people? Yes. Mr. Gordon?
Personally, I don't think this is a financial hardship because they're going to be building another house. I mean, that has to cost X number of dollars. So I don't know whether or not it becomes a financial. It may be. I don't know how big a house they're planning on building. But I'd like to ask Mr. Smith a question, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
I really don't like to be personal in this, but I'm also looking for another way for me to get you this variance.
Okay.
And you say that you want to move onto this property to be closer to your son and his family. Is that to provide some type of, is there a reason that you're going to do that, a specific reason? I don't have to know what it is, but there has to be some reason for you to, where are you living now?
We live south of town, south of the university,
Uh-huh.
and this is northeast, way north.
Yeah, I know where it is.
Okay.
All right, so did you perhaps even consider perhaps just putting on an addition? Even though it would be part of the house, separate?
No, we do not at this point feel like we want to be moved into the same house as our son. We have another son on a short distance, different piece of property, who has 3 sons, young, and they depend heavily on my wife and myself to help with their kids. So it's to help a hardship they have and also to help us in the future as we get older and need help. And we have a financial hardship in the fact that there's no way we can meet the requirements to subdivide, pave roads, and so forth. That is way beyond any means we will ever have.
Well, there is also the avenue of getting a waiver, but that's another task that you'd have to go through.
And if I might add, sir, when we bought this land, you could split land, into 2 pieces, and that has changed. Steinborn and Company were going to buy the land from us some years back and develop it. That's when the annexation occurred, and we became part of the city, and the rules all changed, and then they bailed out and did not buy the land. So that's what put us in the situation that we're in now.
So I would assume that do you own the house that you live in now?
Yes, we do.
So you would sell that?
Yes, sir.
And then just go build another one?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Smith?
Madam Chair, thank you. Sarah, and Madam Chair, maybe I refer this question to fire, the topic of safety. Thank you.
Good evening. Mark Dublin with Las Cruces Fire Department.
I need to swear you in.
Okay.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
Yes.
Thank you. State your name again.
Mark Dublin.
Thank you for coming today. In brief, it was discussed that fire was concerned about distance. Does the Moongate solution apply?
there's two issues. The first one is the water supply. There isn't a hydrant anywhere near the property. I believe it's over 1,000 feet away. I'd have to check that. So if they installed one at the property line, then yes, that would meet the fire flow requirements. The other issue is the distance from pavement. The nearest paved road is many hundreds of feet away. The house itself is set back over 150 feet from the road itself, so it adds greater distance. We have some responses in those areas where the trucks or the ambulances, mainly for medical response, have to carry people 500 feet sometimes to get to the ambulance. We're not really equipped to respond in four-wheel vehicles, so we have to deal with whatever conditions we find when we respond. So the fire code has a requirement to be able to get within 150 feet of those structures. There are other structures out there that we can't get within 150 feet of. We want to minimize those as much as we can.
The solution to that would be pavement only, or pavement or alternatives?
The code is strict regarding an all-weather surface is how it's defined in the code.
Sarah, are there alternatives?
Commissioner Smith, there are alternatives if they were to go forward through DRC. Through this process, the applicant is not required to improve that right-of-way. They would be required to improve that right-of-way if they were doing a subdivision. And that's when the alternative options could be available. That's where we have pay in lieu of, a smaller distance. As far as fire code based on the variances, is the second home going to be permitted on the property? Since there's already an existing home on the site, now the current conditions are there. So this would still be a fire code regulation as opposed to the variance request that's at hand. So these are options as far as moving forward. How would the property be able to accommodate? Is there going to be a concern if a hazard does happen there and they don't have the access?
Just keep trying.
Now you have to get really close to it.
Apparently so. Not that close.
That's it.
I would add that as it was pointed out, if the applicant were to build his house on his lot next door, then he would not be required to make those improvements because a person is allowed to build a single home on a single lot. So anything that would mitigate those circumstances would help. Certainly the hydrant would help.
Mr. Smith, did you want to add something?
I just wanted to reiterate that there are other homes further down the road than we would be, and they are given fire protection as needed, I assume, or they wouldn't have been approved. But
Are they as far off the road as you are? You're way at the back of the lot.
The picture is deceiving. If you could bring it back up.
Also, Sarah, could you just tell us where Longview Road is? Is it this long stretch or the short one? So it's only 330 feet we're talking about? Is there any estimate of what the road waiver would be, or what the road cost would be?
I'm sorry. Okay. Longview Lane is an extension of Settlers Pass.
Mm-hmm.
So Settlers Pass is paved. Where it ends, I believe it becomes Longview Lane. We can never pay for pavement that far, but again, if you were just a few feet further north on a separate piece of property, we would not have this issue. It's the problem is trying to put two houses on one piece of property.
Do you own the lot next?
Yes, ma'am, we do. And we are not building on it because we hope that someday in our lifetime or our children's lifetime, a developer will come along and have the resources to develop it, which would be a big boost for the city because it would be many houses on one 20-acre lot. We cannot do anything. When we bought this land, it was dirt cheap, and dirt was a lot cheaper back then than it is now.
So there's a lot of development around you,
We're
the
not
south and east, and some coming in north.
a great deal coming in.
So it seems to me at some point, greater development might occur there. It's not possible for you to, it wouldn't help any even if you just paved the part that was in front of your property. I mean, it's a huge, long road that needs to be paved.
Yes, ma'am.
And we have some subdivisions out on the East Mesa that don't want their roads paved, who've come to the city and asked us to work with them so that will not happen. So there are quite a few houses on this stretch that's not paved. If at some point everybody on that road agreed they wanted to pave, the city would work with you all to do that. And we've done that a couple times. But I don't see any sense in asking you to pave the roads. Installing the utilities underground, is that a problem? You have to get really close to activate the mic.
Hello? Okay. We can afford to do that. The only thing, the main issue would be the electricity running underground. It adds a significant amount to the building situation, but it's doable as opposed to the road, which is not doable.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I may follow
Commissioner
up
Smith?
to Fire while he's nearby, and he can snuggle up to the microphone.
Yes, Councilor. Okay.
You're doing great. Do you find in practice that it would be reasonable and acceptable that it's paved well in front of a house should there be some issue for delivery of your service rather than dirt? Or is it required or practical only that all of it's paved?
It would be that it was all paved. I mean, I would agree with Chairman Thomas that paving a section of it would not help. I think feasibly, the hydrant would add a lot more benefit to the public safety of the area than a section of road.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Sarah, did you want to add something?
Madam Chair and Commissioners, I did confirm with our legal counsel how monetary is basically established and how it's regulated is if there are no other options for that property owner who is requesting the variance. In this case, we do have an option, which is why staff recommended denial for that option, just to clarify.
So what other options, what were you saying that other options are?
Could have been to place the single-family home on the northern property because they do own another property and would not require variance or any of the improvements.
I see.
So from our standpoint as staff, we would say that that would lead to you have another option as opposed to this would be your only option on a site.
I see. Thank you.
How far away is this other piece of property that they would perhaps put a house on in terms of being close to their children? It's not miles. Huh?
The property is just north of the subject property.
Could you point it out with your cursor there? So it's basically right next door.
Is it another 10-acre piece of property?
Madam Chair, I believe that is larger. Yeah, it's a 20-acre tract of land.
Oh, it's a 20-acre tract.
So why don't they put a house there?
And also can only have one house on 20 acres.
Madam Chair, that is correct. As a current zone, it only allows for one home.
And so if one house were built there, then it would not be attractive to a developer because they would have already built one house, right?
Madam Chair, that could be a possibility, correct?
Commissioner Smith?
Forming my thoughts, but I think I've heard from the applicant sort of a sequence of thinking over the years and in their current planning that they're trying to be efficient with use of land. But I also see and hear through staff that there are alternatives, not yet being observed or sought. Those are just thoughts. I don't have a conclusion from it.
And I think I have the same thoughts. There might be another option, though. I can see from their thinking that not spoiling that other 20 acres for a potential developer is a pretty wise decision.
Madam Chairman, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Nichols.
Larry.
Hello, mine is on. Only I can speak.
Mine works just fine.
Well, our recorder is absent, so I'll have to wait till they come back.
You're okay.
She
You
recording?
can- Yes, you can.
Okay. Larry Nichols, Community Development. Members of the commission, every once in a while we get a project like this, or a submittal like this, where they have purchased land a number of years ago. They were in a different jurisdiction at the time, and now they find themselves in a jurisdiction that has other regulations and rules. We've discussed this project quite a bit. We know that we have to follow our regulations and making recommendations to the commission. We have no options there. But we do have a vehicle that the variance possibility. And I think the variance is item that addresses projects such as this. And I think that the commission could consider this project with conditions and maybe see what could be done that way. Yeah.
Everyone can have mine.
Madam Chair, I find myself veering towards this idea of with conditions. So Moongate water hydrant set near property, and some attention to road grade feels right to me. It's a corrective action that gives safety. It's due attention. And I think that there is a facilitation to their plan, their long-term plan for their lifestyle that could be made available.
Chair Thomas, Commissioner Smith, I think the fire department would concur with the variance. I think we could support a variance to that effect, rather than build a house on the 20 acres next door to have the second home with the fire support.
Can't hear you.
I hear him from this side.
Okay. I could hear it over the speakers.
Yeah.
The Las Cruces Fire Department could support the variance of the hydrant in the road in lieu of road improvements, so that we don't have a house on that 20 acres next door with a single home.
In lieu of?
Yes.
Road improvements? So yeah. The hydrant proximity serves your needs?
I think it's a good compromise. It would improve the overall safety of the area to have that hydrant.
So you're saying the hydrant would be quite important and other kinds of measures not so much?
Yes.
Mr. Nichols, would you explain what you were talking about before?
What I was suggesting was that for this particular project, the option that is available for projects of this nature is a variance consideration. Some of the things that Mr. Dubba just mentioned from the fire department would be a condition. The applicant has said that he could consider the possibility of underground electric. I think there's probably an electric service to the existing property. And so it could be taken from that transformer back to where you would locate your property. And that portion could be underground. Would that be correct?
There's actually a transformer closer than that that we would come off of. I've already spoken to the electric company. Can you now? Okay. There's actually a pole with a transformer on it closer to where we would be building than the existing one where our son's house is. So yes, the power is there.
So do we have to say that we vote yes based on monetary issues and with certain conditions?
Madam Chair and Commissioners, if you were to vote yes, you can state using any type of our comprehensive plan, you can state monetary, you can state any reason as to why you would approve it that was not provided in your staff report because it was recommendation of a denial because we're bound by code. So you would just state, since it's already on the table for approved, a motion would need to be made saying we approve with conditions, the conditions laid out, seconded, and then you would make a vote.
We need a motion to do that.
Because we only have a motion right now to approve. We need a new motion to approve with conditions if conditions were placed on the property.
Okay, so I'm understanding the conditions to be installing a hydrant, receiving electricity off of the existing electricity that's available nearby. The electrical service is nearby. Is there another one? Okay, does somebody want to make that? Is that it? Somebody want to make that motion?
Madam Chair, I can make that motion that we vote to approve with conditions, and those conditions include Moongate hydrant at the property line and electrical access from the available stub out.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
Now you may vote, Chair. Now you can vote on the
Okay.
motion.
Becky, can you call and vote?
Madam Chair, I vote yes with conditions, based on the idea that it meets master plan, community development, and hardship.
Board Member Nice. I need you on a microphone, one way or another.
There you go.
There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I vote yes with conditions
Board Member Sanchez.
of the fire hydrant and the electrical, underground electrical.
Now, Board Member Sanchez, please.
So I vote yes, based on the monetary hardship and the additional costs they would incur to do something other than this.
Board Member Guerrero.
I will vote yes with conditions. I was going to vote no, but I will vote yes in conditions. Best of luck.
Board Member Gordon.
based on our discussion here this evening, the conditions that were put on the petition were for a fire hydrant and bringing electric power from a source, I vote yes.
And Chairperson?
I vote yes, given the conditions that we're putting on the proposal so that they can go ahead and not suffer from a hardship.
Madam Chairman, if I could, I guess, make one correction on the electrical service, and that was to vote that the electrical service that's existing from that point would be underground to the new property, but they could utilize the existing one above ground. Yeah.
I see. Does everybody agree with that?
I think everybody understood.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, Sarah, are you agreeable? Are we okay? Now we have to go back to the original motion.
Madam Chair, based on the motion that was already presented, you had already brought the case forward with approval. When we redid the motion to approve with conditions and everybody did their vote, we have now basically voted this motion as approved. It has passed 7. And with that underground notion, as far as the electrical power, that's already part of the zoning, so we can't deviate from a zoning requirement. So I'm glad we added it as a condition, but it's a condition that's already placed on the property as it exists. So motion would be approved with condition that the fire hydrant be installed at the beginning of the property, and then all utilities are basically underground as per what the zoning requires already.
Okay. But they can do the underground from the existing.
Yes, there's no designation as to what power source you come from. It's just if you try to install any overhead lines. That's usually the city's concern.
Yeah, okay. And we don't need to go back to the other motion?
No, we've already voted, and then everybody has already provided their finding as to what they have approved.
Okay. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, good luck. All right. Last is a commission commentary. Anybody have anything to add tonight?
This particular last case only brings back to mind the problems that we have had, especially since I've been on the commission for the last 6 years, where property that originally was located in the county is now located within the city, and people are basically trapped now by laws that they did not anticipate when they bought the original property. Like in this case here, he had it for 43 years. So I think that when community development starts its next project, which is redoing the zoning laws, that's somehow, some way, some consideration has to be made to either grandfather these people in or make some way that they can afford to do things that they anticipated they wanted to do when they originally bought the property. And I think that this just is a reminder. We've talked about this for many, many times, and I know that Mr. Nichols has told me that the next project that community development is going to do will be the zoning. So let's hope that somehow or other these problems won't reoccur.
Commissioner Guerrero?
I just a kind of side comment. I just wanted to thank you guys for waiting. It is 9:14 right now, and you guys have been here since 6 o'clock. Unfortunately, you guys had to sit through the first case just to get heard, but thank you so much for being patient.
Any more board comment? Yes, Commissioner Smith?
Madam Chair, in concert with Commissioner Gordon's ideas, I think I would also emphasize it's reassuring to know that staff is consistent with their recommendations, consistent with their procedure, and consistent with how they present what is in front of them, in a very fair way. That's my point.
Thank you. Commissioner Sanchez?
Just one more thing real quick. Thanks again to city staff for all your hard work this evening.
Anyone else? Any staff announcements?
Madam Chairman and Commissioners, just one staff announcement is, I guess this will be a repeat, but I want to thank each and one of you for your participation on the CPAC committee and also on helping to get the Elevate Las Cruces comprehensive plan approved, and we'll be putting that into effect right away. The second item that would be is we will be undertaking the zoning code update and review so that it is in concert with the Elevate Las Cruces. I think that's something that hasn't been revisited since 2001, I believe. So it's time for that review and update on that. Thank you, Madam Chairman. That's all.
Anyone else? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Since my mic works, motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned. It's almost 9:20.